Hey guys, thanks for joining me for another Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia video, and today we are going to do a guide on force weapons. Now I know I'm a couple days late to this. I just got back from being out of town. I'm planning to basically shoot out this guide, and I'm just going to shove character guides out. And I think rather than spread everything out, I'm just going to dump it all, like, because there's more content coming. So expect a bunch of character guides that come out really soon, and a Shinryu run. I'm going to try to just record them and put them out as quick as I can. We'll see how that goes. It might be a video overload for you guys, but we'll see, because Dokkan's got the anniversary coming, so like I'm going to have tons of content to do, so I'm not really worried about that. So I think I'm okay just putting all these videos out right away. So in this video, what I'm going to do first is just talk about what force weapons are, basically how to get them, how to awaken them all the way, and then talk about force enhancements and how that all works. And then we'll finally go into a little showcase where I will demo the force time mechanic and kind of explain how it works and some of the nuances that come along with it, right? So right now we're looking at Kain's force weapon. So the first thing that you need to know is there's kind of a new weapon hierarchy of what you can equip, because a big question that comes out is, you know, what is okay to sell and what do you need to keep equipped to your character? So the weapon hierarchy right now is Ultima weapons are the top tier, then a green burst, then force weapons, and then below that would be a non-realized burst weapon. And then below that would be the EX. And then everything after that you wouldn't want equipped anyway. So basically that's the tier, right? So now, the way it used to be is if it was an LD only character, you would have the EX was your main weapon equipped. Now, LD only characters, typically a lot of them are becoming with force weapons. So now if you're like an LD only force character, now you're actually going to equip the force weapon and you are free to sell the EX. Normally you could only sell the EX for burst characters. Now if you have a force burst character like Kain, it's going to vary. If you either don't have the burst or you don't have the burst realized, you want to have the force weapon equipped. If you are greening the character, so for example, I greened my Kain, you're actually free then to sell the force weapon off, provided you've maxed it. And when you sell a force weapon, you will get, as long as it's maxed out, which that's the only time you'd want to sell it unless it's like a dupe later on down the road, you're going to get 4 high power stones back. So that's good for like upgrading the weapon. So I'm actually in the shop right now showing you Kain's FR, because I actually already sold my Kain FR because I greened his burst. So that's what Kain has equipped right now. Actually, Kain's got the Ultima weapon equipped. So yeah, but that's kind of where I'm at with that. So I was able to sell the force weapon off. So the first thing is how do you go ahead and upgrade the force weapon? So essentially upgrading the force weapon, it's exactly the same as upgrading a normal 5-star weapon. It's just you're using a different type of power stone. So there's essentially a few different ways you could go about this. So one is you can pull for dupes. So you'll see here at the top where it says limit break and it's showing 3 empty ones. Once you pull the main force weapon, you need to limit break it 3 times. So that's either 3 more copies of the force weapon, or you can use normal power stones, or you can use high power stones, okay? High power stones would be limited at first, but they already started putting some out on the Chocobo panels. So if you pull a force, you need 12 high power stones, or if you're going to do normal power stones, you need 240. So I'll show you guys how to do that really quick here. I can't like demo like live because I already like upgraded Kain's force. I'm not going to pull an extra force just to demo that. But the drop rate on a force, this is worth noting, it's the same as an LD. So they're not like the hardest thing to pull. So pulling dupes while going for a burst is actually somewhat realistic. That was kind of my plan in my video, but my summons were too fire. If you haven't seen my summons yet, you definitely want to check those out. Some of my better summons I've had. I've actually had some really good fire lately. Hopefully that doesn't mean bad luck for Dokkan's anniversary coming up, but you never know. We'll see. So let's say you just got Kain right now. You don't have any high power stones, but you want to max it out without pulling dupes. Then what you do is you can go in with normal power stones. So the way you do that is you go to the Enhance tab here, and you click Refine. Now there's something like really important you want to watch out for in this Refine tab here. You'll see the high power stones are right here. So they're right in the top left. Now a lot of people, like everything in here, there's no reason not to just max it out. So like if I want these red books, I would just hit max and make as many as I can. The high power stones, you do not want to do that. When you want to make them, you click exchange, do not click max, because you're going to drop all your regular power stones, and you still need regular power stones to like upgrade your LDs and stuff. So what you do is you just go up here, and if you don't have any dupes and no high power stones, you're just going to put this up to 12. So you're going to exchange for 12 of that, and then that's what you need to do. And then you just feed them in like a normal 5-star. So it's really not too different. Once you do that, the force weapon will change from purple to blue. It'll kind of look like the high armors, the blue high armors. So as long as your force weapon is blue, and if you say green to your character, then you are good to go and just sell the force weapon off right away if you want to, and then you'll get refunded basically 4 of those high power stones. So realistically, if you're upgrading a force weapon for a green BT character, it in a way only costs you 8 high power stones, because you're going to buy it for 12, but then you're going to sell back and get 4 back. So in reality, you're only losing 8 high power stones, right? So that's basically how you increase the weapon. Now, the other thing that came out are force enhancements. So force enhancements is going to be in a different tab. So if I'm in the enhancements tab here, it's way up in the upper right. It says force enhance. Now, not every character has it. Right now, there's only 6 characters. So I'm recording this on launch of Force Era. So these are the 6 characters that have it right now. Force enhancements are going to do a few things. So let's go ahead and we'll just look at Kane here, because I've got Kane fully upgraded. But what happens is, this is kind of like crystal levels in a way. People are kind of comparing it to that. But basically level 0 through 10, basically you're just using character points. Now this is something that if you're a new player, this is definitely going to be a struggle for you. But they have done a lot like with this update to heavily increase character points, especially if you're willing to even just buy the cheap Mog Pass. And they did put some in the current co-op as well. You can get 30,000 in there. So that's pretty nice of them to do that. But basically the first 10 levels are basically free, especially if you're a veteran like me. You can see I've got 500,000 character points. I'm never running out. So basically every character, even if I don't have all their kit, I'll probably just put this up to 10 immediately. Now once you go past 10, you only want to do this for characters that you really want to invest in. So my recommendation, now the character, the force enhancements, these aren't like a must have. Like you don't have to have these maxed out on every character. Like you can have all your characters at 10 and then only go to 30 on like the ones you really want, right? But basically what they're going to get is, you can see as I'm scrolling through this, they're basically getting a lot of stats and then just upgrades to all their skills. So overall, it is really going to heavily impact their damage, especially with damage dealers. So eventually you do want to max these out, but once again, I would pick and choose the characters you're going to be using a lot. If you're just going to use like say, let's say you're just going to use Kais for synergy just to get through like a chaos quest right now, you don't have to make him, 30 for this. You can definitely get by at 10 or even 0 if you want to, especially if you're just kind of carrying a character. But just really kind of pick and choose, because right now the force enhancement stones are a little bit more limited. So the part that's limited here is that when you come through at level 10, going from 10 to 11, you need to use 1 force stone or 20 force fragments. So the force stone and force fragments, they're kind of like ingots, but not really, because you don't have to refine them. Like you can't take your 20 and like refine it into a full stone. Just when you do the exchange rate, it just automatically will take your unrefined ones first before it uses the refined ones. Basically, you need 3 total force stones or 60 fragments is what you need to like completely max force enhance a character. So basically at level 11, you need 1 force stone. It unlocks, and then you get 10 more levels you just keep putting character board points into. And then at 21, you have to put 2 stones in. Now, the nice thing is when you max a force weapon, they're giving you 2 stones right out the gate. And then if you beat the Shinryu, you get another stone. So basically, every new force weapon, you automatically can max out that single character. It's the kind of the side characters that you wouldn't necessarily have enough to do right away, so you kind of pick and choose. So every event, for sure, you can, at bare minimum, max force enhance 1 character. I feel like over time, these resources are going to build up a little bit, and you're going to be able to do more and more characters. You'll see at the top, I've actually maxed Penelo and Kane, and I already have an extra 4 stone and 4 fragments from like other quests and things like that. So, and plus, if you want to be a whale, like you definitely could be a whale, you could just pull for like dupe force weapons and max them out just to get the 4 stones. You totally could do that. So if you want to whale out, you can whale out and max force enhance everyone, but to me it's not that important. Like I said, just pick your 1 or 2 really important characters per event. And those are the ones I would max out for that. So that's force enhancements there. So my Kane is absolutely maxed out, like everything, like as high as you can go. So I've got that all done there. So that's that part. The next part we'll talk about is actually how does the force time work, and we'll actually demo that in an event. So we'll hop right into Kane Shinryu here, and we'll just go ahead and demo that. So let's just go to my chapter list. New update here. I don't have to scroll through the map. I can just click where I want to go on the chapter list, and it's pretty convenient, and then it takes me right to where I need to go. I was actually already on it, so I didn't have to click it, but that's fine. So let's go ahead and hop into the Shinryu, so that we can demo the force time. And this is, I'm going to do a Shinryu, like a full recorded run later. This, I think, is the team I'm going to use for it. But let's just hop in. I'm definitely going to take Auto Plus off. I don't think I'm going to worry about a friend right now. And we're just going to hop in and demo how this force time works. So what's going to happen here is there is no longer a Lufenia orb. Now, a lot of people are probably pretty happy about that because you feel like it's less restricted, but basically the force gauge is still kind of like an orb. It's not necessarily going to insta-kill you. There is more freedom there, but the fight becomes a lot easier if you meet certain conditions. So on the left side, we have the enemy force gauge, which is red. It's at 0%. Our force gauge is blue on the right. Now in Shinryu, we are going to start at 0%, but if you do lower level quests, it'll start at either 50% or even fully filled up. But Shinryu is the main place we're going to be using this or like really caring about it. So yeah, it starts at 0. Now, the new mechanic that happens here is as you take turns, both your gauge, so anytime any turn is taken, the enemy's gauge will go up a little bit and yours will go up a little bit. The thing that is really important now is that now support characters are actually, part of their role of a support character is actually to be a force charger, right? So Garnet here does not have force enhancements, so characters without force enhancements will not charge the gauge as much. So for example, on this Shinryu fight, this is why it's really hard to go in without Kane or even without force-enhanced characters, because what happens is if you don't have enough of that, the enemy's force gauge will actually go up quicker than yours, and they get force time first. The enemies getting force time doesn't mean you like instantly lose. It just means for their force time turns, they get special abilities that can be very difficult, and they can make the fight very difficult. The other thing you'll notice in the upper left, in the red gauge, you can kind of see that there's like 3 slash lines through the gauge. Those are thresholds. So for every fight's going to have different thresholds. They're going to have different effects and things that they do. For this fight in particular, the thresholds are going to make it so you take more and more HP damage, like as an aura. You're just going to have like HP poison damage that you really can't deal with other than you can heal it back. But there's no way to get rid of the aura until their force time ends. The only way to end the enemy's force time is to let them take their turns until it is done. Or you can cancel their force gauge by using your own force time, but it has a special requirement where you have to use a certain force time with a certain condition. So that's why they're going to make it so you can't just use Kane for like ever and ever and ever. This particular Shinryu, because it's focused around Kane, if you use a force time with that deals range damage, then it will cancel it out during your force time. But when your force time ends, their gauge is going to continue. All right, so let's continue forward. I'm just going to take a couple of turns with Garnet here really quick. We'll go ahead and use the AA here. You'll see even on the AA, the force gauge went up. Now you can see our gauge is at 3.2 and there's that 2.4. Ours is staying up slightly over the enemies. That is because we have 2 force enhanced characters. So we have just enough to do that. What we'll do with Garnet now is let's use the burst attack. And then what we'll do is we'll get to Kane, where we can talk about the force weapon and stuff a little bit more. And then we'll get to Penelo. Penelo plays a very important role in early Shinryu, as she is right now the best force charger character. Now Selphie, when she gets her enhancements, will be like right there, like as the best one. But Penelo, that is like a huge role for Penelo now. So I did actually go ahead and blue her armor because she's going to be very important. I'm going to be using her for a while in these Shinryu fights. Okay, so what you're going to notice with Kane here, all the attacks are normal, but now he has a blue force attack. And you can see it is blacked out right now. So you are not allowed to use that force attack until your force gauge is at 100. What happens is when I use it, you're going to get 10 turns of force time. Now, the force time will only be at 10 if the force weapon is maxed. Otherwise, it's only at 5. So I highly recommend if you are going in for a force on a character, you do need to intend to max it out. It is a huge difference having 10 turns of force over 5. Okay. So Kane, what we'll do is we'll just do a couple. There's a really cool combo here with Kane where you can get Kane up in the air, and then you can let Penelo, basically why she's so good at force charging, is she can take a bunch of free turns in a row, and she's going to charge the gauge pretty quickly because of her style and that she has force enhancements. So I'm going to just put Kane up in the air right now. And then we'll just let his off-turn damage go. So Penelo here is known as what we would say a force enhancer. So you'll notice that her haste rumba and her regen waltz, they're highlighted in blue. So when the skills are highlighted in blue like that, that means that they are good for charging the force gauge. Or sometimes what will happen is when you enter force time, certain attacks help charge the force damage. They will also highlight if they help charge the force damage, which for Kane, I believe it's when you launch or when you deal range damage, right? But for charging, those requirements aren't in place. It's only for when you're like increasing the damage percent, which we'll talk about that when we get in there. But watch what happens to the force gauge now with Penelo. And what I'll probably do is I'll just go crazy and probably charge it up all the way here. So she's got like her 15 and 35. They're basically just free attacks. And you'll see we shot up to 19% just for using one skill. I could even use the AA if I wanted to. You can see it's not highlighted in blue, so let's use the AA. And you'll see that it goes up not as much, right? It just tipped up like a little bit. So when you really want to charge the force gauge, you want to use these blue highlighted moves. So now if I do regen waltz, you'll see she's going to get a free turn. So let's go ahead and do that. So what we're going to do is, because I'm using this force charging character with force enhancements, charging really fast, now we can really push ahead of the enemy's force gauge and get our force time first. Now, force time is a little bit different than like a burst and a summon. It's kind of like a combination of the two. Because like a summon, the whole party will act during force time, but it doesn't like freeze the enemy. Like the enemies will still get turns, it's just that their gauge gets frozen. So I'm just going to sit here and charge up with Penelo as I talk about it a little bit. And basically during force time, those 10 turns, basically every action it'll subtract. So even if you do like a free turn, free instant turn, instant action, it will still, if you use an AA or a call, it will still subtract from that force time. So it's really important that you kind of set up what you need to before you enter force time. And during force time, you're really focused on like mashing damage buttons and really maximizing on that. So we're just going to keep going with these free moves here with Penelo in order to get our force gauge fully charged up. Once that force gauge is charged and Kane has a turn, then we're free to go ahead and use force time, right? Now the enemies, you'll see their gauge is slowly charging up. I'll probably do like a regular turn here with Penelo actually, because Kane got pushed way back. That's part of like what you want to happen when he jumps in the air. But since he got pushed so far way back, let's go ahead and just use the LD here. This will end Penelo's turns, but Penelo's going to have another turn before Kane comes up. So I'm just going to do this just to get like her LD going. And that's fine. Okay, but we're over 60%. We're going to be good. Yeah, I still don't even see Kane. He's pushed way, way back there. So what we might do is, sure, let's just go ahead and do this. We'll just let the enemies get some turns here, and we're going to go until we can see Kane. Okay, so now Kane is coming up finally. So what I'll do is I'll just take a normal turn here with Penelo. We do have the EX, so the EX is always a free move with her, so we'll do that. But by the time Kane's up, we're going to make sure we're fully charged and good to go there. And then we can kind of demonstrate the force time. Now, the other unique thing about force time is that you can actually do it more than once per character in a fight. So if you have, so every character can use force time twice. You have to recharge the gauge each time you do it. Here, we'll just do this and let the enemies take some turns here. So you can do it twice, but you have to charge the gauge each time. And then every force character can use it. So it's not like burst where like if you do it with one character, you can't with the others. Every character, as long as they have a force weapon passive, they can all do it. So if you're in some really long drawn out fight, you technically could use 6 force times in one fight. Most of the time that's probably not going to happen, but it is possible. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get to Penelo's turn here. So what we're going to do is we're basically going to charge up until we're maxed out. You'll notice that on our force gauge, we also have a threshold. So when we're at 80% or higher, we're also getting like bonus effects active. So that's something else to note as well. All right, so now we're fully charged. We're at 100, okay? Now you'll notice we're starting to take some HP poison damage. That is because the enemies, you can see they crossed their first threshold and it is now glowing. So what's going to happen for this particular enemy, as we pass each threshold on the left, the HP damage is going to get heavier and heavier, okay? So here, this is a free turn, so sure, let's just take it. And then we will go ahead and do a regular attack and get to Kane's turn. We'll let the enemy take a turn here. Unless their break resets, we'll just break them and then Kane will get a turn, but that's fine. Yep, so let's go ahead here. We'll just do a HP attack, let Kane get a turn. Alright, and then what we'll do is we will enter Force Time and kind of explain how that works. Also, guys, at the end of this video, if there's anything I forgot to talk about, or if you still have questions about Force Time, Force Weapons, Force Enhancements, please let me know in the comments, and I will try to answer them. But I'm kind of, like, I didn't, like, write down notes or anything. I'm literally just doing this off the top of my head. So there's a chance I can miss something, but I think I'm pretty much getting it here. All right, so what we're going to do now is we are going to hop into Force Time. Now, what I want to do in Force Time, for this particular Force Time, is I actually want to use, I'm going to use Kane's LD first. So that I have my stacks. Because what I want to do is after I enter Force Time, I want to jump in the air with Kane. It actually is what I'm going to do. So now I'm going to enter Force Time. So this is going to do a Force attack. Every Force attack combos with another character that has something in common. So Kane is going to combo with Aranea because they are both Dragoons. So basically, from my experience, just looking at JP, they always pick a character from a different title. I don't know that they've ever paired with somebody from the same title, but they pick a character with something in common. So I think that's kind of cool. Now, you'll see that the enemy's force gauge is frozen. So their gauge will no longer increase. If their gauge were maxed out and they were in Force Time, it basically freezes their Force Time, but then they'll come back into it. Now, in the upper right, you'll see we have an HP damage bonus at 125%, and the 10 stands for how many turns of Force Time we have. Now, we have to be very choosy about what we do. We don't want to waste on, like, free AAs or anything like that. We pretty much always want to be doing damage here. So with Kane, I'm going to jump up in the air. And then what happens is every time you do some of those requirements for Kane, whether it be range damage or launching, that force gauge now is going to bump up and start to increase. The other thing that's interesting about Force Time that's different than Summons and Burst is that you can actually use Burst and Summons while you're in that phase. So right now with Garnet, I could go ahead and enter a Summon here. Activating the summon does not take up a turn of Force Time, but any other like free action typically would. So now Garnet here is going to go ahead and just start attacking. So sure. And what will happen is this guy's launchable. So even though Garnet's not doing range damage, because she's going to be launching here, and I think the launch has to have like 3 people total participating in it, this should increase the force gauge. And then because Kane is up in the air, he's always doing range damage. So you'll see that as these effects happen, that damage multiplier goes up. And what this causes is it causes you to do like really insane amounts of damage. Yeah, you can see it just keeps bumping up there, right? So depending on the force character you're using, you can do really nasty combos to like really make this go up, right? So now with Penelo, I don't want to like putz around and keep using Haste Rumba and stuff like that. I'm going to use the LD to do a little bit more damage right now, especially because I'm in a summon as well, right? I mean, you could spam free turns with Penelo and just let Kane like rain down through the air that way, but it depends. What I typically would do probably during like a normal fight is I would maybe like bring in a friend unit for Penelo that can really help deal damage. Because that's kind of a strategy you would do is like if you have a force charger that doesn't do a lot of damage, that's kind of when you'd want to bring in the friend unit, right? Let's go ahead here and let's see here. Yeah, we'll just... Sure, let's just do a regular attack here. But you can see our damage numbers are going up, and we get those cool gold numbers to really show that we're dealing. But we're to the point now where Kane's, like, just free follow-ups are over 600k. By the end of this, he's going to be doing about a mil AoE with those. So this is why, in this era, the bosses have such high amounts of HP. Because they want you to abuse this Force Time. They want you to do really, really heavy amounts of damage. Now... right now with Kane, you're usually going to get up to like 200 to 250%. There have been some players I've seen that have really found ways to optimize it and really crank that gauge up to like 400%. But it just depends on the stuff you're doing. I'm just like casually kind of showing it to you right now so you see how it works. For those of you that have maybe heard of Camlanot and people talking about like how he's really busted, the reason why he's so busted is the way his mechanic works. It just allows you to make the force gauge damage multiplier go ridiculously high, like upwards of 800% or something crazy, and it just allows you to do crazy amounts of damage. So that's why people are talking about Cam, is he really enables that, and it's really kind of crazy. So now we've got Kane, so let's just do like a regular... see, what I can do with Kane here is let's just do the EX, which will launch. So this will be pretty heavy damage here. Okay, and then we'll attack through. And then attack through here. Okay, and then the multiplier will go up, and we're just doing more and more damage. So you see pretty heavy damage there on that hit, right? Okay, so we're at 200%, but it can go higher than that. So we're going to go ahead and keep attacking. We've got a launch here with Garnet. The problem is the enemies aren't going to be pushed back. So I don't know that this will count for the multiplier, because you have to launch with all 3, and we only have 2 in there. So we'll see. It might stay at 200 here, because Garnet doesn't do range damage. Yeah, it just stuck at 200 there. Oh, no, it did go up by 5. Okay, good. So we still got a little bit of an increase, right? Okay. Sure, let's just go ahead and attack here. So what we'll do is we'll just attack through, and we'll get out of our force time. And then what I'm going to actually do is allow the enemies to get their force time, so you can kind of see that happening. Now, if the enemies are going to be taking force time, you just have to be prepared for what they're going to do. So I very well could die in this video, but that's fine. Okay, actually, I shouldn't have hasted there because I just wasted that last turn, but that's fine. So we'll attack through. Once again, we're just letting you guys see it, right? This is just meant to be like a beginner's guide to Force. All right, so the enemies are at 68%. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to keep attacking through really quick. I'll let the enemies take their turns. We'll just let their force gauge carry up. Now, one thing I could do here is because I have another force time available, I could just power through with Penelo and like free turn, free turn, free turn, and then cancel theirs out. But we'll just let the enemy take theirs here. Here, we haven't done Kane's burst attack yet. Let's go ahead and do that. Kane has a fairly generic burst effect. It just kind of like buffs the party. It's one of those. Doesn't do anything too crazy. But any stats you can get, the better, right? So the thing with force time, there's a lot of different ways you'll have to plan around optimizing it, right? Like you might want to plan, do I want to get all these burst effects up first? Do I want to do it during a burst? Do I want to set up like a free attacker? It's kind of cool because it adds another like element of strategy to everything, right? So we'll just attack here since it's free. Okay. If I thought about it, I could have just made this like my Shinryu run, but I'm not like doing a very optimized run right here. I'll do a dedicated run separate, but we're just going to let the enemies get to their force time here. So Garnet, sure. Let's actually do the LD so we can just heal up a little bit. But our health is going to keep getting drained, right? And I could die here, which is fine. Basically what the enemies are going to do when they're in their force time, they do more powerful attacks. And at any point during their force time, if any character's health falls to 30% or lower, they will immediately, even if it's not their turn, they will use Gaze Plus and insta-kill it. So that's what you're dealing with. So now the enemies have activated their force time. So you see they only get 3 turns. So basically the goal here is to let them take their 3 turns and skate out. Now right now with Kane, if I just attack right here, they're going to do HP damage, and Garnet's pretty low. She's going to die. So what I'm going to do is I actually have a healing call. So for this particular Shinryu, healing calls can be nice. The other thing too is if like you're ending the fight when you're in the poison state, you can very easily miss the HP requirement of the fight. So I do like healing calls for this fight. Now I could go into burst mode here with Kane, but it doesn't cancel out the enemy's force time. So during that entire burst, I'm still taking poison damage. The enemies are still going to have it. Like the only way to get rid of it, like truly get rid of it, is to let the enemies take their turn. So I'm going to try and allow them to do that here. We'll see what happens. Okay. So, yep, this is going to do HP. Yep, and she's going to insta-die here. So we'll see that. And that's from the force time, right? So if you're not prepared for that, that's what can happen. So we'll try to just power through here and let the enemies go. So let's go ahead and, sure, I'll just attack here. And we'll just let them take their 3 turns. Okay. Yep, so Kane's fine there. He didn't take too much damage. But, yeah, that poison is just so heavy. So now it's like, yeah, I've got to kind of heal again. Otherwise, Kane's going to get Gaze Plus on him. So their force time is really built for just draining your health. Because that Ultrasonics doesn't always do a lot of damage. Let me see. They're only targeting Penelo here. So sure, let's just go ahead and just do an attack. That's fine. Okay. So she's getting hit back to back here. So yeah, they're going to HP again and she'll probably... Oh, we got the miss there. That would have killed her. But now that the force time is over, you can see it just reverts back and now we're back to normal. So had Garnet survived, we'd actually be okay here. And just through that natural progression, we're almost up to 100% force time again. So there's a couple of ways I could have dealt with that, right? I could have set up with maybe a really good strategy is actually to put a like Celis call, like a lock call on Kane, so that like you can jump up in the air, have the enemies lock on the Kane, and then they'll just keep whiffing. So that's one way to deal with it, or just having like a dodge character around. Having damage mitigation, so that's why like Warrior of Light is featured. So there's a lot of ways I could have dealt with that. Another way is let's say Garnet was going, I knew she was going to die, no way to get out of it. Coming up, if Penelo had a turn first, I could just like crank up and charge my force, and then go into force time to kind of mute theirs for a little bit till I could get a better setup. So a lot of ways you can deal with it, but that's basically it, guys. That's the force time. You can see here really quick, if I crank up, I'll just crank up really quick with Penelo. Penelo, like I said, early Shinryu, she's a very important character. I highly recommend you guys try to get her if you're going in with Kane. She's a great partner for him. So then what I'll do is I'll just attack here. Kane will get a turn, and what you're going to notice is that the force time is up again. Now, the other thing I guess I should tell you guys, so I could enter force time again, so let's do it. The other thing I should mention is you can actually use the force attack during your burst phase, and your force gauge does not need to be charged, but it does not initiate a force time. So when you're in burst phase, think of the force attack as just being a strong attack. That's literally all it is. So we're in force time right now, so let's go into burst during force time. And you can see I can do that attack again. It doesn't reset the burst timer, nothing like that. Just literally, it's an attack. And it does whatever the attack normally does, but does not impact your force time in any way. So don't feel bad about using it during the burst, but also don't expect it to like cancel the enemy. Like, it won't cancel the enemy's force time, nothing like that. So we'll just go through and we'll finish with this little burst time here. We're here with only 2 characters, but we're whittling them down pretty good, even with Garnet dead here. And you can see we're just working on charging the force gauge. So, like, if you're trying to run a team with, like, characters that don't buff, that, like, they don't fulfill those conditions to increase your damage multiplier, you could go into the burst phase for the force character, because everything they do is going to obviously trigger that, right? So I can double jump here, jump up in the air, and then what happens is, since Kane immediately has a turn, he does lance at once, and then he just drops down and does a big attack. Which is pretty nice. A lot of damage there. So sure, let's go ahead and we will just do this. Do a little launch. Sure. But the damage numbers get really crazy. So what I'm excited for is, I'm a big fan of Machina, and he's known for having like insane burst phases. I saw a video of somebody basically using Machina when Camelot is out, when you can get that multiplier ridiculously high, and they literally did like a 70 mil burst phase. So the damage is just going to only increase and increase as Shinryu progresses, and you're going to see some insane numbers, some insane things. I may try to replicate some of those things, we'll see. I would say for like this, like, I'm a serious like player, I'm definitely not casual, but I'm on the more, I lean a little bit more casual. I always say this in my videos, I'm not one of these people that like crazy study the game. I don't look crazy ahead in JP. I really like to experience it as it comes, and then I use my expert knowledge of the game as I'm playing it to kind of experience it with you guys and show you guys what's going on. That's why I didn't do this force guide ahead of time. I'm like, I want to have it, I want to experience it, and I want to explain it to you that way. So anyways, guys, hope this helps. If I missed something on force time, force gauges, all that stuff, please let me know. Thanks for watching. We'll catch y'all on the next one.